Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. From his difficult childhood to a struggling actor to being one of the greatest, I want to share this inspiring story of this film icon, Sylvester Stallone, as he turns 76 years old today. As the eldest son of Frank Stallone, a hairdresser and beautician who had moved from Italy to the US in the 1930s, and his American mother of French and Jewish descent, Jackie Stallone, an astrologer, dancer, and promoter of women's wrestling, Michael Sylvester Gaudenzio Stallone was born on July 6, 1946. Complications during his mother's labor forced the obstetricians to use 2 pairs of forceps during his birth, and the misuse of forceps accidentally severed a nerve and caused paralysis in parts of Stallone's face. The paralysis of the lower left side of his face, including parts of his lip, tongue, and chin, which gave him this signature snarling look and slurred speech, and as a result, he was bullied so much as a child. His father then moved the family from New York to Washington, D.C. in the early 1950s to open a beauty school, and his mother opened a women's gym called the Barbellas. I found it strange that at only 5 years old, his parents dropped him off at an elderly home, but I guess it's because there were no daycares back then. And in 1957, after his parents divorced, he moved to Philadelphia with his mother and her new husband, a pizza manufacturer. As a teenager, he attended private Catholic school in Philadelphia called the Notre Dame Academy. Then he attended Lincoln High School, but after failing to complete 10th grade, he was enrolled in Devereux Manor High School for emotionally troubled youths. By the age of 13, he had been kicked out of 13 schools, including schools for troubled kids and military schools. He was basically a juvenile delinquent and didn't fit in. He also ran away from home multiple times, in his words at least a dozen times. At 16, he went to Florida with no money, ended up selling the coat he was wearing, and he was only left with $3, so he purposefully got arrested so that they'd take him back home because he was a minor. That's so clever. So he saw this military base and broke in at around 10 p.m. and went to steal food. Everything was locked up except for oatmeal. So he choked on the dry oatmeal, and they had him, arrested him, and saved him. He was so disruptive as a teenager. He wasn't allowed back to the state of Pennsylvania and was banned from the entire Maryland school board. At one military school for troubled kids, he actually stole knives. I think that's where his love for knives came from, because if you've watched the John Rambo movies, he always carries around this big knife. At Devereux Manor, the teenager took up football and began lifting weights, and when he graduated, he was awarded an athletic scholarship to the American College of Switzerland, where he spent 2 years from September 1965 to June 1967 coaching girls athletics. He also starred in a production of Arthur Miller's Death of a Salesman in college, which inspired him to become an actor. He then returned to the United States to study as a drama major at the University of Miami from 1967 to 1969. And in 1969, he went to New York. To survive as a young adult, he was a bouncer, a lion cage cleaner, he cut fish, an usher, a volleyball coach in Switzerland, grocery store salesman. He chased people out of bookstores if they robbed. And he got fired from all those odd jobs. He went to 1,500 castings before his big break, and they always told him it would never work. His speech impairment, his mouth is crooked, he slurred, but he had a dream to become an actor, and the few movies he was cast as a thug. he was told that he would never be an actor. But he didn't quit. He began to read, and he didn't read when in college, but he began reading because he was broke. He would spend hours at the New York Library. So he lived in this small room. It was 8 by 9, and it was so small that he would close the window and the door while sitting on the bed. So he would write and write sitting on the bed, and then he painted his windows black. He painted them black because he didn't want to know whether it was day or night, and he didn't want, like, if it was breakfast time and he had to go get breakfast, he thought he'd derail himself. He also took out the phone to avoid any distractions, and he sat on the bed and he wrote and wrote. And it was bad at first, it wasn't good at all, but he wrote every day, and it was getting better and better, like a machine, like a muscle, until finally the idea for Rocky came. So you must fail 100 times to succeed once. No one succeeds the first time. It's learning how to not get disappointed with failure. And then he moved to California, and things were rough. So he sold his dog for $40 to $50 because he wasn't going to be fed very well. And then one night he went to see Muhammad Ali fight Chuck Webner. And he got so inspired about how fighting this champion, Chuck, not only lasted, but knocked down the champion. And he was going to be remembered for all eternity. He did something extraordinary. And so he said to himself, I think that's what he needs as a catalyst for an idea. A man that's going to stand up to life and take one shot and maybe go the distance. So he wrote, and 3 days later, he came up with the script of Rocky. So he went one day on a Bob Shutoff and Iron Wrinkler casting call, and he wasn't right for the acting part. So on his way out, he said, I don't know if it matters, but I do a little bit of writing. And they told him to bring it around later. And they loved the script. They were very enthusiastic about the script, but not him playing the part because he wanted to play Rocky. They said he looked funny, he had no film history and no acting history. So they offered him $25,000 to buy the script, and he refused. They offered him $100,000, he refused. They offered him $150,000. They offered him $175,000 to $50,000, $30,000. It went up to $360,000 for the script, and he didn't take it. And at that time, he had $106 in the bank, and his $40 car had just blown up, so he was taking the bus to work, and he had sold his dog. But he was like, I've really managed poverty very well, and I don't know what it means living with money. He was not used to the good life, so he didn't know what he was missing out. And he also knew in the back of his mind that if the movie, if he sold the script and it did very well, he would be very upset. He just believed in it. And so they agreed to put him in the film, and they gave him $35,000. The first thing he did was go get his dog back. He offered the guy $100. The guy refused to give the dog back. And remember, he sold it for $50. And he gave him $500. He refused. He gave him $1,000. He refused. And he ended up giving him $15,000 and a part in the Rocky film. The dog was also in the film. Rocky came out in 1976 when he was 30 years old, and it was a smash hit. He couldn't believe it. When they first went to see the screening of the movie, he received a standing ovation from the big people in Hollywood. The movie made $225 million, which is equivalent to $1 billion today. They only used $950,000 to make it. And that was his start of the successful acting career. I hope you enjoyed my story time. Thank you so much for watching. Goodbye.